Hey everyone, and welcome. I am absolutely thrilled you're here with us today for this explainer. We're going to unpack something that is, honestly, truly mind-bending. We're looking at how biological life, everything from the plants rooted in the ground to the blood pumping through our veins, physically adapts to the invisible, relentless force of hypergravity. Now, we all take gravity for granted, right? Because it's always just there. But the data we're going to dive into today reveals just how dynamically living organisms respond when that fundamental force gets dialed up. We've got some incredible source material to get through, so let's just get right into it. All right, to really wrap our heads around the science here, I want you to start with a little thought experiment. Just imagine waking up tomorrow morning in a 2G world. Every single kilogram of your body's mass remains exactly the same, but it suddenly presses downward with twice the force, every second of every day. What happens to you? Better yet, what happens to the world around you? Okay, let's dive into Section 1, a heavier world, living at 2G. Because the immediate physical reality of this environment is completely overwhelming to a body that evolved for 1G. Think about the very first challenge you'd face, just trying to stand up. Your hips and knees would literally flex slightly under the sheer weight of your own body. Your postural muscles would have to switch on instantly, working so much harder just to keep your head above your feet. Walking? Yeah, that's no longer this automatic, mindless thing we do. Every single step now costs significantly more muscular work, and the leg that catches your falling body has to absorb twice the energy. Even taking a deep breath becomes an absolute chore. Your diaphragm, your rib muscles, your entire chest wall, they're now operating inside a physically heavier mechanical system. Deep breaths suddenly feel exhausting, and since the atmosphere itself has weight, the air pressure at sea level would essentially double. It is a crushing top-to-bottom load. Now, before we look at how the human body handles this, let's explore Section 2, plants at 1.5G, biological defenses. You might assume plants would simply be crushed, but life actually fights back. According to these incredible studies using centrifuges to simulate 1.5G, plants don't just survive the stress, they adapt remarkably well. Researchers found that plant germination and early growth are actually enhanced under higher G levels. They undergo significant tropic responses, which basically means they rapidly adapt their growth, their orientation, and their fundamental structural organization plan to better resist that increased gravitational pull. They literally reinforce themselves through tissue strengthening and lignification, essentially building much tougher physical structures. And it gets crazier. Down at the microscopic level, higher gravity increases both the size and the synthesis rate of their chloroplasts. It's a brilliant, highly active biological defense mechanism in action. Moving on to Section 3, the heart's challenge, fighting gravity. Because while plants can just kind of sit still and build thicker cell walls, we humans face a much more dynamic, moving crisis when gravity scales up. And this brings us to a fundamental concept we really need to nail down: hydrostatic pressure. Basically, when you're standing up, gravity acts on your blood exactly like it acts on a column of water. It creates this intense pressure gradient, so the pressure is highest down at your feet and lowest up at your head. Now, at 2G, this hydrostatic pressure difference from your heart to your brain absolutely doubles. So what does this actually mean for your heart's workload? Well, at a normal 1G, your brain sits roughly 30 centimeters above your heart. Your body quietly solves this uphill climb with standard blood pressure, elastic arteries, and those handy one-way valves in your veins that stop the blood from falling backward. But at 2G, pushing that same blood 30 centimeters straight up becomes a monumental, exhausting task because that downward hydrostatic pressure has doubled blood pools aggressively below the heart, especially in the legs and abdomen. Less blood returning to the chest means less blood reaching the brain, and that's a massive problem. Which leads us to Section 4, adapting arteries, vascular remodeling. For decades, we've known a lot about G-forces from fighter pilots. But those pilots wear anti-G suits and perform intense breathing maneuvers. All of that masks how the human body naturally adapts on its own. So to figure out our true natural biological response, researchers subjected 11 healthy men to a 5-week centrifuge training regimen. We're talking about 40-minute sessions of elevated gravitational loads several times a week. And here is the kicker. These subjects were totally relaxed. No anti-G straining maneuvers, no pressurized suits. The researchers wanted to see exactly how the cardiovascular system dynamically remodels itself over time when it is forced to endure these massive, repeated hydrostatic pressure spikes.
When you look at the results, it's pretty staggering. There's a 13% increase in relaxed rapid onset rate, or ROR, G tolerance. The data shows a highly significant physiological improvement after those 5 weeks. Without any external help whatsoever, these individuals literally grew more capable of withstanding high gravity. But the real question is, how did their bodies actually pull this off?
This is where human anatomy is just absolutely genius. The researchers discovered that to prevent blood from disastrously pooling in the lower body, the subject's leg arteries and arterioles literally stiffened. They built up immense pressure resistance. And what's wild is that it was a highly localized adaptation. The blood vessels in their arms, which obviously weren't subjected to that same deep hydrostatic column, remained completely unaffected. By stiffening the plumbing specifically in the legs, the body successfully maintained blood pressure at the cerebral level. It made sure the brain kept getting oxygen even as gravity was actively trying to rip the blood downward. But of course, survival like this comes at a cost. Let's move into our final section. Section 5, Anatomy of a Survivor, Long-Term Changes. What would a human body actually become if forced to endure this kind of extreme, long-term gravitational stress indefinitely? You see, the human body isn't a static statue. It constantly remodels itself based on the physical loads placed upon it. To survive long-term at 2G, the heart muscle would have to thicken significantly just to continuously fight that extreme pressure gradient. The muscles in your calves, thighs, back, and neck, they would heavily bulk up to handle the load. Human movements would become shorter, much more economical, and physically closer to the ground just to avoid the massive energy cost of falling and standing back up. There's this quote directly from our source material that I absolutely have to share with you because it perfectly captures the profound toll of this biological adaptation. It says, "The survivor after a year is not a superhero. He is a patient whose treatment plan has become his anatomy." Wow, that is a sobering thought, right? Gravity wouldn't necessarily defeat us, but it would edit us. It would force a completely new shape upon us, demanding a thicker heart, stiffer arteries, and a heavier, slower existence just to stay alive. Gravity usually just feels like background noise to us. But as we've seen today, through both the thickening of human leg arteries and the accelerated lignification of plant tissues, it is secretly one of life's greatest authors. So, as we look to a future where humanity might travel to different worlds or spend long durations in deep space, we really have to ask ourselves, how will our physical environment and forces like gravity continue to shape our biological evolution? It's a powerful question to leave you with today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep wondering, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time for our next deep dive.